would be really cool. I think that Deadmau5, in terms of his setup, I watched a few videos a while back. He'll have like, I think it's 8 or 16 stems of the individual songs, but his approach is a little bit different. He really enjoys longer form. I would say he prefers more the traditional way of mixing his music and performing it live. Very much the sort of 8 or the 16 bar build up, adding the kick and adding the snares. One of the interesting things is that when he's able to break down those stems on individual songs, that he can really manipulate and create extended versions of that piece. And you can really, with that setup, then you're able to really hone in on where you want to add individual reverbs and delays and stuff like that. The crush effect is quite a powerful tool that you can use. It is essentially like a big crush, something that has become quite popular, not as much as it was, say, a few years ago, when a lot of those lo-fi sort of mixes and stuff came out, but it holds its own place. With that regard, in terms of like the big crush and stuff, that I love that effect. I don't like using it too much because it's quite abrasive, and it's quite a unique taste to have when you're applying it to your mix. But doing it creatively and doing it with this type of song where like some of the lyrics complement it well, I think you can then use it quite creatively. There's many different ways you can use it. I like using it, when I'm switching between songs, creating a transition, using it with a delay or a reverb. That works really well. Just that adds a bit more warmth to the bit crushingness. Other ways you can use it is to create a bit of a sort of vocoder sound on the song in general. One of the things I would love to see, I'm not sure if it's available yet, but is the ability to sort of break down the song into, like 4 stems, and then being able to really like through AI or something like that, being able to focus on one particular stem, like the vocal or the drums or something like that. So like every time you put it into your channel and it loads up, you have the ability to break it down into its own components, individually apply the big crush to the vocal, for example, while that track's playing. Currently, I'm not aware that that's possible yet. That would be something that would be really cool to get incorporated. Sometimes, well, actually, I would say a lot of the time. In some ways limiting when you have to do it over the whole mix. Like it's a very broad stroke. You can't really fine brush, in the background. It's very much, there. You can apply gentle effects around it and stuff like that, but having it individually for one section would be really cool. I think that Deadmau5, in terms of his setup, I watched a few videos a while back. He'll have like, I think it's 8 or 16 stems of the individual songs, but his approach is a little bit different. He really enjoys longer form. I would say he prefers more the traditional way of mixing his music and performing it live. Very much the sort of 8 or the 16 bar build up, adding the kick and adding the snares. One of the interesting things is that when he's able to break down those stems on individual songs, that he can really manipulate and create extended versions of that piece. And you can really, with that setup, then you're able to really hone in on where you want to add individual reverbs and delays and stuff like that. I know he's mentioned that he's not too fond of inbuilt effects for the actual controllers because they're not to his liking in terms of the analog nature of the effects. He prefers to have outboard analog effects and individual console mixes than the more digital hybrids that are available here. Personally, I'm a fan of both. My setup is, how can you put it, my budget and what I operate with, and in terms of the other instrumentation and stuff like that, that for me is the best option all around for what's available. Obviously later down the track, when I am in that position, like Deadmau5, and he has the resources to enhance the audio quality and in turn be quite quite an audiophile about the equipment that's used, then yeah, awesome. And in terms of like the LEDs and stuff like that, it's just bonkers. Like, it's so cool. The stuff that he does, big fan. But in terms of mixing and stuff like that, it's that approach. So he's breaking down the stems, and we can't necessarily do that here. I can with my own individual songs, but I had to put them over 4 channels in this one. I can get a bit funky, but it's a cool idea. It's something that it's possible. You can try that with some of your music if you're doing it more from the DJ mixer frame rather than Ableton and more like what Flume and Disclosure and Rufus, those type of cats, what they do is a little bit different. Each has their own sort of space concept of what can be possible. I am getting a little bit off topic here, but that's okay. Just so you can get my take on things. For a long time, I was also trying to figure out what exactly is going on, how that works. So if you look at Disclosure and stuff like that, essentially what they're doing is they're using digital workstation, whether that's Logic, Ableton, very common because it's reliability during live settings. They're able to then have particular stems that they can have at their disposal. Some elements are live, they can incorporate drums, etc., and vocals on top of that. I would say the backbone or the workhorse behind it is digital DAW, and they have essentially a structure which you've talked about in creating that mix or that show structure of what they want, and then it follows that process from my understanding. From what I can see on the outside, from the ones I've watched, that's sort of the vibe that I get, which is really cool. You can be very creative with that approach, but if it is too structured in terms of the backing and stuff like that, I'm not exactly sure how they're switching, if they have the ability to switch over freely and flexibly to different songs. So if they play one, if they're able to quickly switch to a different one, I'm not sure if they're able to do that, or they just have a sort of set sort of structure that I have to sort of go through because everything's sort of locked in, and then they're able to add the drums and everything else on top of that. So there's something to think about in terms of what your approach is, perhaps even blending, some of more the sort of DJ mixer sort of stuff with other elements can work. So there's many different ways that you can approach that.